We are live in 10, 9, 8, 7. Oh, I think we're live, guys. So, welcome to the remodel recipe where you learn stuff only contractors know about remodeling. Whether you want to remodel yourself or hire a contractor, these are things you'll want to know before you call a contractor or start buying stuff. And remember, guys, you'll probably only remodel your kitchen once. So that's why you have to know this stuff. So we're going to answer a bunch of questions. But first, in case you guys don't know, Tim, here is Tim. Introduce yourself, Tim. Tell us a little bit about
Good
yourself.
afternoon. I'm Tim Johnson. I'm the construction lead with Livewell Construction, based out of Estacada. So, been doing this a long time and enjoy what I do very, very much. We're hoping this will really be helpful to the people that want to tune in and watch. We'd like you to ask questions if you have any. Join us anytime.
Awesome. So yeah, we're going to get into some questions here that you guys need to know. And so just so you guys know what we're going to talk about, the first we're going to do what's the hardest part of a kitchen remodel? What's the most expensive part of a kitchen remodel? What is the golden rule for kitchen design? So stick around if you don't know the golden rule. And even if you do, stick around because we're going to get into the nitty gritty of that. And we're going to get into our own stories about why this stuff is important and how we've learned the hard way about this type of stuff. So, um, Tim, I want to do, what do you say? What do you think about this, Tim? If we do a rapid fire round, does that sound scary to you?
Yeah, bring it on. Let's go.
All right, so the rapid fire is where I want you to just answer the question that I ask with 3 words. All right, and then after we get done with that, then we're gonna get into it really good. Um, so are you ready?
I'll give it my best shot.
Nice. Three, two, one. So, what's the hardest part of a kitchen remodel in 3 words? I'll give you 5 seconds to think about it.
Inconvenience to homeowner.
All right. That's the hardest part of a kitchen remodel. Okay. That makes sense. I like that. Um,
I think that most of the time customers don't realize when you tear a kitchen out, it could be a couple weeks before you have running water in that space again. If you've got a family, if you've got children, that can be a big inconvenience and something that a lot of people are just not ready for.
gotcha. All right. And the next one is what's what is the most expensive part of a kitchen remodel in 3 words or less?
Appliances, appliances.
Okay, nice. Okay,
Could be, absolutely. Depends on your taste. So
yeah, that's true. And then what is the golden rule for a kitchen design?
I think the golden rule, and it's something that, 3 words.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
work, space, triangle.
Nice. That's that's definitely, if you haven't heard that before, that's going to generate a lot of confusion or curiosity. Now, and the last one, another curveball for you. Are you ready for this?
I'm giving it.
How old are you in kitchen years?
um, kitchen years. One kitchen in a lifetime. I've done a whole bunch of those. So I'm going to say really old. I just turned 60 in March.
Okay,
62 in March.
that was
Excuse me.
33. That was
62 in
33
March.
words.
Yeah. So
Nice. Okay, so really old 60. I think that was your answer. Nice. Okay. Yeah, because you were born with a spoon in your mouth that was made of wood, right? So,
yep, that's the one.
yeah, that I'm too young to have gotten that phrase correct. But um so now we're going to go out a little bit more into or in, however you want to describe it. We're going to go into the 1 minute version of these. So we're just gonna you can take a few seconds and synthesize and then try to give us a 1 minute summary of the answers to these questions. And then we're gonna get into all the stories and all the good stuff. So, what's the hardest part of a kitchen remodel in about a minute?
I still think it's the inconvenience to the customer. People, it's always nice if you have a laundry sink or another place to do dishes. We always tell people to set up a like their dining table against a far wall in the kitchen, get the microwave set up, the fridge we can plug in on another wall. They may be doing a lot of uh, fast fooding for the next couple weeks while things are going on, but that
Yeah,
tends to be the hardest part for the customer. Most contractors that are skilled at what they're doing, there's not a really difficult part. You may run into a bump now and then or an issue, but those are usually quickly taken care of. We try to take care of them very quickly for just that reason to keep things back on track.
nice. Okay. You know what? I forgot my coffee over there. That's too bad. I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. Um, so that is the hardest part of the kitchen remodel, and we'll get into some more hard things about kitchen remodels in just a minute. But next, tell me about the most expensive parts of a kitchen remodel in about a minute.
I think truthfully, the most expensive parts are probably if you're doing custom cabinetry or something to that effect. You can get to some pretty substantially expensive countertops, and you can also get the same basic quality countertops for less money. So just depending on how fancy you want to go with each item in the kitchen. If I could tell you just a smidge story, I had a wonderful customer come in one day, and they just picked out all this beautiful stuff, and I did a beautiful design for them, got all the appliances in list, and when they came back, I gave them a number, and she about fell out of her chair, and I said, well, based on the average in this metro area, and based on the home's value, and based on this, I was like middle to just above middle range of what a kitchen remodel should cost in your home. And she goes, well, that's way more than we planned on spending. And I said, well, how much did you want to spend to remodel your kitchen? And she said, well, we were hoping to spend between $5,000 and $6,000. And I smiled at her and I said, Miss, the refrigerator you picked out was $6,300.
Wow.
So she hadn't even done any math. So they were young and just had done no research. So they really didn't know what to expect. But she picked out almost $15,000 in appliances,
Yeah,
but was hoping to remodel her entire kitchen for $6,000. So
gotcha.
that was just something that just not a lot of research went into that first decision. And so we did end up doing a kitchen for them, but it was substantially more than her expectations. They did work it into their budget, and it was substantially less than what we had done. But we didn't go with quite as an expensive cabinet. We got useful working appliances, but not all the fancy high end stuff that they were hoping for. Still got the ice makers, still got those things, but yeah. So it's being prepared. Go in with realistic expectations when you want to remodel your home.
Got it. Okay. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people can find a way to pay for expensive things if that's really what they want. But yeah, you have to decide what's a priority, definitely. What's the Now in a minute or less, what is the golden rule for kitchen design? How can you explain that for us?
They talk all designers when they're first taught to design. One of the first things they talk about, based on the National Kitchen and Bath Association (NKBA), they are taught the working triangle. The working triangle has to do with the water or the sink. It has to do with the cooking surface, which could be a stove or a cooktop, and it has to do, um, with the refrigerator. So
Yeah.
refrigerator, water, and cooking surface. So
And
That's
being
the
them
working triangle.
being conveniently located so you can get to them, right?
Correct. There should be no less than 48 inches between the center of each of those items and no more than 9 feet between the center of those items. I mean, if you had 9 feet between all of them, that's a 27-foot walk every time you want to walk from those three. So that could be a
Yeah.
lot of walking in a kitchen. There's kitchens that are big, that big, but those are in awfully big homes
Yeah,
and
yeah.
awfully big kitchens. So,
Got it. That's perfect. That's a great synthesis there. So let's summary. So um I just want to interject here on the most expensive part of a kitchen remodel really quick because I it came up for me, or I just thought of it. And so we always talk about the most expensive things for kitchen remodels, and I know Tim already knows this, but he was answering based on how the question was phrased. But the actual thing that contractors don't want to tell you is that the labor is the most expensive part of the kitchen remodel. And I've told, and I may have mentioned this already, that we're going to tell you things that only contractors know, and the internet won't tell you. I just did a search on the internet for the most expensive thing, and it said that labor was second or third behind cabinets or appliances. And actually, I've never met a contractor that's had, 60% materials, 40% labor on their bid. That just doesn't happen, and it happens for good reason. And people you might not think about this, but it's the most expensive part because one, contractors have high insurance costs. They have high liability, so they're working inside someone's home and they're working with load bearing walls. They're working with things that can fall, things that it can electrocute, things that can explode. And so they have to, it's a high risk um, occupation. And so and if they get something crooked, then they lose that customer for life, right? And they lose all the people that they tell that they got it crooked. So it's not a it's not a straightforward job. It's a highly special remodeling is highly specialized, and you can do it badly or you can do it mediocre, and that's fine if that's what you want to pay for. Um, but then the other thing that people don't tell you is that remodelers who give you a price where you're spending most of your money on materials, and obviously we're excluding the very high end kitchens where the countertop itself costs thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I understand that. If all of that stuff costs a whole bunch of money, then there is a conceivable way that the labor could be less. But collection items and just things that are just ridiculous. But if you're talking about normal, nice things in a kitchen, the cabinets are going to be less than what it costs to install the entire kitchen. The installation for the cabinets might be less than what the cabinets cost, but not the installation for the whole kitchen. So, what was I else was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, the contractors who give you a very cheap labor price, that's fine. That's great if that works for you, but those contractors are not making money and they will go out of business and they will not have they will not be able to give you any sort of guarantee or warranty because they'll be gone, right? 3 years from now. So you have to think about that. And obviously, if you work with someone, you want them. to succeed, right? So, but that's neither here nor there, neither here nor there. But just wanted to let you guys know that uh, we are transparent with our customers. The Our customers know that the labor costs more than the actual stuff, except in rare cases. And that's fine, as long as everyone knows what's happening and you're happy to pay for expert installers and expert designers and expert remodelers. So let's move into the next part, unless you have something to say about that, Tim.
No, Justin, I'm going to interject with exactly piggyback on what you just said. That's the one reason I came to Live Well is the transparency, the upfront with everything, and the integrity behind the company. I did some research, and that's why I put my years of experience behind Live Well because that's just the way we do it. And I I think I can tell you at least one horror story where a customer said, "Oh, we're getting custom cabinets and for this much money," and he's installing them for this much money. And what he said he was installing them for was about a fifth of what the cabinets cost. And I said, and I got to see the kitchen, and I said, my brain first thought was, you didn't get custom cabinets. You got cabinets that didn't cost the $10,000 he said they were going to cost and $2,000 to install them. He gave you $5,000 worth of cabinets and he charged you $7,000 to install them, but he told you the cabinets cost $10,000. And the client said, "Well, I didn't get to see all the receipts." Well, it was evident she didn't get a $10,000 cabinet job or a, what she was quoted. She got a lesser quality cabinet, but he told her, so he wanted the more money, but he wanted the bid. So she gave him the bid because she was getting a nicer cabinet and paying less for the install. But that's not what she got. And so
Yeah.
there are the dishonest people out there, and that really broke her heart when she found those things out. So
And one other thing is that you have to take into account, is you can do your kitchen remodel yourself, or you can have your buddy do it. There's no shame in that. Some people are in that place and that's what they want to do. No problem. But it just so you know, the more expensive something is, oftentimes the more difficult it is to install, right? So if it's a low end product, it it's it's low end because I guess we could get into the nitty gritty of that, but basically, you have these huge manufacturers, these huge companies that have huge budgets, and they're able to create products that are super easy to install. So, but then if you're going with a highly custom stuff that's handmade, or that's hand cut, or from some exotic place, this you're not dealing with something that's made to install easily. You're dealing with something that's made to be a precious item in your kitchen. And so to install it without breaking it, to install it so it looks right, to install it so it's straight and level, is much more difficult. So that's why, even if you think, oh, well, the cabinets are super expensive, and then you go, why did the installation cost go up? In comparison to the other thing, it's like, well, because the contractor probably understands that it's harder to install those things.
Justin,
And if you mess it up, also they know they have to be even more careful because they can't ding it, right?
yeah, Justin, the perfect example of that was the big kitchen we just did, and we had the a $3,200 kitchen sink. It was carved out of one piece, one solid rock of travertine marble, and then sealed. It weighed 312 pounds, but it was going to be under granite. So we had to cut and support the front of that cabinet, but carry the load of the entire sink all the way through the cabinet to the floor. It took 3 grown men to slide that sink into place carefully, not to damage that sink. And yeah, it was one of the most beautiful sinks I've ever installed, but the entire sink was being built around that one item. So when people walked in, they didn't even say anything. They just take a big deep breath because it was such a gorgeous showpiece, but it was a very usable sink. I mean, it's going to be gorgeous when it's being used. But yeah, it was not only an expensive sink, it took a lot of extra support and work to get it installed into those beautiful cabinetries properly.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely an eye opener. Just to think about how, all the labor that goes into it, all the manpower, the brute strength, and the expertise to make sure you don't break it. So let's move on. Let's talk about the hardest parts of a kitchen remodel. We're gonna get a little bit deeper. We you time for stories here. You What are the hardest parts of a kitchen remodel? You said inconvenience to the customer, because people are in their house all the time and things are moved around, and the water might not be on in the place that you're used to it being on. But let's talk about, if you let's just do it. Let's start out this way. If you were to do it yourself, and let's say you're handy, it's not your full-time job, but you're handy, what would be the hardest part, um, of the kitchen remodel to do? And you could we could separate that into two. One might be, the design might be the hardest part, but maybe I'm wrong. You're the expert, but um, let's say, putting the design aside, let's say you got it right. What would be the hardest part of the kitchen remodel?
I think, and some of the trades may disagree with me. I think my most gifted that I am in the trade is the cabinetry portion of it, and setting the cabinets level is is not a super difficult thing to do, but it's a very easy thing to mess up. And when I say cabinets level, that doesn't mean, there are some countertop companies that will say, oh, level within an eighth of an inch and 8 feet.
Yeah.
Well, within an eighth of an inch and 8 feet is not level. That's
Uh,
unlevel, but only an eighth of an inch off in 8 feet. Level means just that. It's level. That means front to back, left to right, level. Also, when you stand in your kitchen, let's say your kitchen's a big L shaped kitchen. When you're standing at one end of the L and you look down the face frames shouldn't go in and out because your walls go in and out. The face
yeah.
frames should be straight as an arrow on both sides, so your countertops have the exact same overhang when they come in. They can alter the countertops to the wall to follow a little curve. So you may need to shim the back of this cabinet on one side, but not on the other side to get that face frame level. So level means level, and properly screwing the cabinets together, as well as finding the studs in the wall, you know, is just, it's very important to do it that way. Your cabinetry, almost every cabinet produced today has a hanging rail for a wall cabinet. Every screw needs to go through the top of the hanging rail and the bottom hanging rail on those wall cabinets, and every screw needs to find a stud behind a wall. If you don't do that and you fill it up with grandma's rare china, you may have grandma's rare china sitting on the kitchen floor the next morning and the cabinet laying on top of them. So the cabinetry is what I believe can be the most difficult thing to do properly.
Nice. Th- I have a question about that. How many walls in kitchens, just off the top of your head, have you found where, let's put it this way, they were perfectly straight, or let's put it another way, you didn't have to shim it differently in one place than another?
I will tell you, in my entire 42, 43 years career of installing cabinetry, I don't think I've ever used less than a full pack of shims in a kitchen. very, very common to use 5 or 6 packs of shims. And I even take the 1.5 inch wide shims, split them down the middle so they're only 3/4 of an inch wide. So I have less shim to cut off and less obtrusive look when I'm doing it. And it just doesn't happen. And I know that people build beautiful and they're fairly plumb and square homes, but when you add different layers of mud and sheetrock goes through a machine and it's fairly level, but even machine made sheetrock can be off slightly, and you put all of those together, you could be off 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch very commonly down a flat wall, what's known as a flat wall. So
Yeah,
two by
exactly.
fours will bow if the 2x4 is a little wet when it goes into the wall, and as it dries out it wants to bow towards the inside of the house. Yeah, those things can happen, and they happen all the time. Very rare that it doesn't exist.
I've heard of green installers multiple times say, "Oh yeah, it doesn't look good because the wall's not perfect." And and I first started hearing that when I first got into construction, but then I realized they were full of it because every wall's not perfect. Like
Yeah, well,
not
that's
very
like
many
a
walls are perfect.
yeah, it's like a
So,
mechanic saying, "Well, the brakes don't work because the car's old." It's the brakes should work even if the car's old. You got to put the brakes on properly. So
got it.
cabinets got to go in properly, or you can have a mess.
All right, so we've got cabinets, and let's just do second thing. What's the just in an average kitchen remodel? What's the hardest part as far as install that is not the cabinets?
Uh, I definitely think that if you're doing it yourself, the DIY customer, we have no problem with encouraging them to do those things. But I think you better know what you're doing when it comes to plumbing, and you better know what you're doing when it comes to electrical. In most states, you've got to pull permits if you move things around. That should really be done by licensed tradesmen, and and both can be very dangerous. You wake up in the morning and you didn't get a pipe hooked up properly because you tried to do it yourself. You could walk in a kitchen with 3 inches of water in the house, and electrical, you could do way worse. You could really injure somebody, if not fatally hurt somebody. So,
Yeah, definitely. All right.
yeah.
So there's definitely more we could talk about that, but we'll get to it in the next episode or in another episode. So what is the most expensive part of a kitchen remodel? So we've talked about the labor, we've talked about how the cabinets are pretty expensive. I think this is the um, fun time where we get to talk about Kevin Pritchard's kitchen.
That was quite an incredible kitchen. It all happened when I was still at a big box store as a
Who is
designer.
Kevin
And
Pritchard, by the way?
Kevin Pritchard was the former GM of the Trailblazers, and I believe he's the GM of Indiana now. I don't know for sure, but I had a chance to work with an incredible contractor named Jim Larson and Roger True, and I think they own a company now that does nonprofit for soldiers, um, and do great work. And they're back east now, but we got to work on the home in Lake Oswego, and it was an incredible home, absolutely spectacular home. So
And how much did the cabinets cost? Do you remember?
the cabinets, I think even after all the promos they got on the cabinets, I think the cabinets were $283,000, and and they were, and that's at the time that was more than the house that I lived in. And the cabinets came on the company truck that delivered the cabinets. It was a 56-foot semi and half of a second trailer of a 56-foot semi. 612 pieces, including all moldings and trims, handles and hardware. Incredible. It was master wet bar, master closet, master bathroom, upstairs hall closet, uh, upstairs bathroom, and then a Jack and Jill bathroom between the upstairs bedrooms. It was two fireplace, the cabinetry on each side of a fireplace. It was the kitchen and the island. There was 22 cabinets in the island alone, and the average kitchen in the average home is 17 to 21 cabinets. So there was 22 in just the island. There was cabinetry in the garage, cabinetry in the downstairs ADU or guest suite, and it was incredible, absolutely incredible to work on that home.
That's that's amazing. So yeah, so that's the cabinets again, but let's just go to a pretty normal-ish. We'll talk mid to high end. Um, that's most of most of the people that we work with are mid to high end kitchens. So what is let's say the cabinets, anywhere from if it's mid like 10 to if it's high then up to I guess in today's money that's like 400 grand, but we'll just say, what would you say, 10 to 30, somewhere around there?
Probably 10 to, you could do some pretty amazing stuff for 10 to $30,000 in
Yeah.
cabinetry.
Yeah.
That's not
In
counting
a
your
kitchen.
labor. But
Yeah.
the big one, the big one I was just talking about that we did the beautiful sink with, I think their cabinetry before promos and discounts was about 75 thousand, and I think they got it down to about 52, 54, somewhere in there. And
Okay.
it's
So yeah,
stunning.
it can get higher.
It's a showplace.
It can
Yeah.
definitely get higher, but so then the second thing after labor and cabinets, what are we talking about? What's the most expensive thing?
Probably the countertops. Probably countertops to appliances. I mean, you can get your basic set of appliances for probably $5,000 to $10,000. You're talking $3,000 for a fridge, a couple grand, $1,000 to $2,000 for a beautiful stove. If you do induction or something a little fancier, it could be. You can get a microwave for $300-400. You can get a dishwasher for $700,
Yeah.
$800. You could do your appliances, but you could easily do countertops anywhere between for a nice A grade, not A quality, but A grade being the lower A, B, C, D, E. The higher up the alphabet you get, the more expensive you get for stone. But you could do an A grade quartz countertop for three to seven, $8,000 for the typical home, and have a beautiful, beautiful countertop. I did a very simple quartz in my home, and then we did a snazzier backsplash. That's where we bought the bling into our kitchen space with the backsplash tile.
Nice. Okay, yeah, we need to do a video about the quartz grading system because most people don't understand that when they say A grade, they think gold, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of bronze. But anyway, we'll get that. You can put in the comments if you want to hear a video about that. But so what is so we went through what's the most expensive part of a kitchen remodel. Now let's talk a little bit about design some more. What is we're talking about the golden rule for kitchen design. You can kind of just talk around that subject and talk to us about why you want it that way and when you might want to break that rule and so on and so forth. First,
I
explain again what the golden rule is, what kind of the standard way they do it.
Yep, the National Kitchen and Bath Association sets up rules, and a lot of the designers in the country use a program called 2020. Great program. I worked with it for 18 years. I love the program. One of the things I liked about the program is every time I broke a rule in design, it would put a little red box down in the right corner. So I could click on that little red box and it would say, you broke this rule, or you broke this rule, or you broke that rule. Now, in all of my years, I don't think I ever designed the perfect kitchen where there wasn't something that I broke. And what I mean by that is you're supposed to have so many inches to the left side of the sink and so many inches to the right side of the sink as far as flat counter surface for setting pots, your drain board, whatever you want to do. Well, you're supposed to have the same with your stove and the same on each side of your refrigerator. Well, sometimes people put the refrigerator on the end of an L-shaped kitchen, like my kitchen at home. my refrigerator is just right of my French door. So it has a decorative panel on the end of it. So my refrigerator has that built-in look, but I have no counter space to the left of that refrigerator. Well,
Yeah.
the way I got around that was I have a small island in the middle of my kitchen. So I have counter space to the right of my fridge and right across from my fridge where the doors are. So I can
Uh-huh.
walk in, set all my stuff. With the sink, now sometimes people have a galley kitchen where you have the sink and fridge on one side, or the sink by itself on one side and the stove and fridge on the other. So you have the stove and you need 24 inches on one side and at least 18 inches on the other, but you've got a fridge on the side you want 24, and the electrical you don't want to remove. Well, you're breaking a rule by doing that. But every now and then you can have need 24 inches on each side of an appliance, but you only have 3 feet of counter space. So you're
Sorry.
breaking the rule. That's okay. You're breaking the rule, but you still have 24 inches on one side of each thing, but they're sharing the center 12 inches. So that's not a rule that's going to really destroy your kitchen space for doing that. Islands, the big one we just did with that beautiful sink, the sink is about 11 feet across the kitchen from the cooking surface, but there's a 4 foot by 8 foot island in the middle of that kitchen, and there's a bar sink in the cooking surface side of the island. And we also put a pot filler in for that customer, which is a faucet that only delivers cold water, but it's mounted in the backsplash above the cooking surface in the wall. So they can fill a big stock pot right there with the pot filler, or turn around to rinse their hands in the bar sink without having to walk around the island to get over to the sink. Really came out nice.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's say get into the recap then. Um, so we'll start with the hardest part of a kitchen remodel is probably the cabinets and the plumbing and electrical. The most expensive part of a kitchen remodel is going to be your installation if it's professionally installed, and then your cabinets, and then your appliances. And with exceptions to those rules, but usually that's about a guide, a rule of thumb. And the golden rule for kitchen design is basically you want to make a triangle so that you have your cooking, your fridge, and your water in a triangle that makes them easily accessible. And so you want to follow those rules, except you can break them if you have things like an island, or you can fill in the blank here, Tim.
Yeah, Justin, I have seen designers that their only concern, and I mean more than satisfying their customer, they were so young and knew what they were doing. Their only concern was that the workspace triangle, and they designed a kitchen that I didn't think
Very
was a
cool.
proper kitchen because they were so worried about not breaking a rule. I
Yeah,
mean, rules. We're not talking about rules in stone. If there's a rule that don't put an outlet, you know, in your sink, well, that's a rule that's kind of a no-brainer. But yeah, those are rules we don't want to break. But I'm not talking about rules that could change your life, but I'm talking about rules that affect the way you work in your space. And if you get too much space between things, you're going to have an issue. If you get too close, you're going to be doing too much elbow rubbing with the second cook in the kitchen. So we like those spaces to be between islands, and walk spaces to be big enough for 2 people to walk through. And there's rules about that. Those are rules that are very important to kind of stick with. I also don't include a double oven. If you've got a cooktop and a double oven going in a kitchen, plus your fridge and water, I don't personally include the double oven in your work triangle. It's the main water, it's your refrigerator, and it's your cooking surface. And then we want to make sure the double oven's in a useful space. But yeah, it's that. So if you have an oven with the cooktop on it, like a typical range, that's your cooking surface. But if you have a cooktop like a gas, 6 burner cooktop or a Wolf or something fancy, and you did a double oven. I've actually even seen the double oven around the corner in a butler's pantry and in a really expensive home because they didn't want to look at the ovens in the space, and they could also vent that room and keep the heat in that room, not in their kitchen when they were entertaining. So then they were still able to work with a burner in the kitchen for the wok or whatever else they were using.
Um, just a quick follow-up question before we end. If you were a if you're trying to remodel your kitchen and someone comes up with a design for you, what would be like a really easy red flag where you would say, "Oh, this is not going to work"?
The quickest thing I look for in the design is I look at corners. And I don't want to ever see a stove put right in a corner if you can at all help it. I would rather not see a dishwasher put right in the corner if at all you can help it. If you do not have enough filler, which is dead space or clearance space in that corner to allow the stove door to open properly without hitting the opposing doorknob or drawer front knob or something to that effect, or the dishwasher won't open, or it'll open 4 inches and then hit a knob, or the drawer uh, opposing the stove, the drawer opens and now it hits the stove handle. So you have to open the oven every time you want to open that drawer. Those are rookie designer mistakes. They're made frequently on rookie designers. Every now and then, a little more seasoned designer will make that mistake. But those are the things to look out for: is those dead spaces not allowing enough clearance. So also, you're never going to have a wall left or right of something that's perfectly plumb. So you get a refrigerator and you slam it right up against a wall coming down the left side of it. Well, some refrigerators require the doors to open outside of the refrigerator box. So the fridge fits in the 36-inch opening, but when you open the left door, it binds up on the wall.
Yeah,
Well, we had a customer in Estacada that was that way. So what we did was we took that opposing wall that happened to be 32 inches deep and we cut it back to the depth of her refrigerator so
got
that
it.
it just showed the side of the door, which really made her happy. We didn't have to do anything major, just cut the wall back, put a new filler and resheet rock and texture that wall. She was happy as a clam. So
Awesome. Well, if you guys have any more questions about kitchen remodels, kitchen design, how to approach contractors, how to figure out if a bid is correct, if a design is correct, just write those in the comments, and we will get back to you in our next video or respond with a comment. And like and subscribe if you guys found value in this, and we will be back next week. So, again, shout out to our sponsors, Live Well Construction and Remodeling, based out of Estacada, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.